Okay. Good evening. Call the LPA meeting to order for November 6th, 2025. The first order of business is the Comprehensive Plan Amendment 21-11 Waterside Text Amendment. Ms. Nolly.
Good evening, members of the local planning agency. My name is Jenna Nobby, Senior Planner with the Growth Management Department. And before you this evening is Comprehensive Plan Amendment 21-11 Waterside Text Amendment. This is requested by Lucido and Associates on behalf of the owner, Canner 96th Street Investments, LLC, and South Florida Gateway Industrial, LLC. So before I get into the specifics of this text amendment request, I'm going to turn it over to Clyde, and he's going to do some background and history of this project.
Thank you, Jenna. Clyde Doolin, Comprehensive Planning Administrator for the record. What you see on the screen is the application for the property for which the proposed site-specific text amendment would be applicable that was originally submitted in 2021. I want to go back to these slides in a second, but before we even go to these slides, I want to go backward in time just a little bit and show you how we got here to some extent. Prior to the submittal of these site-specific text amendments and the concurrent future land use map amendment you'll consider at the next public hearing, back in 2010, the Board of County Commissioners approved a future land use map amendment assigning commercial waterfront and industrial, where you see the blue and the yellow on the 499-acre parcel that was the beginning, was the base parcel for the 2021 plan amendment. That never developed pursuant to those future land use designations. A few years later, in 2019, the Neal parcels, as it was called, CPA 19-6, the applicant proposed to move that commercial waterfront and that industrial land from where you saw it on the last slide to where you see the 250 acres of industrial on this slide. The thinking was it was a no net change in industrial and commercial activity, and it moved it away from 96th Street and moved it over to Canner Highway. It was, like I said, no net change, and it was recommended for approval by staff and was approved by the board. And that is how we got to where we are today, or where we started with the, is this right?
Next one.
Next one?
Yes.
Where we start out in 2021 with the industrial 250 acres fronting on Canner Highway and the agricultural land to the west of it on approximately a total 499 acres. In 2021, the site-specific text amendment and future land use map applications were, as you see here, the text amendment was going to apply to this land that was proposed for low-density residential. That was about, that's on about 298 acres of the 499 acres. And then later, the applicant changed the application materials, in part because of some industrial land use changes that were being proposed on the gateway, the gateway property. As you can see here, parcel 1 and parcel 2 flipped the same amount of acreage around, and it caused the residential that was being proposed in the waterside amendment to also have to change. And so this was resubmitted, and you can see it didn't follow the same outline and the same geometry of the last slide. So then another submittal was made in 2024, which looks a lot more like the one that you have today. The site-specific text amendments were applicable to these properties, this area of low-density residential that's proposed, and I believe that's it, isn't it? Mm-hmm. We go back. So that's kind of some background of how we got here, and it's why you have such a very large application package in your package to review, is you have these multiple submittals that have occurred over years. And so that's the background on the site-specific text amendment applicable to this specific property. And I'll let Jenna take over and cover the more recent submittal and the details of that more recent submittal.
So the text amendment request that is before you this evening proposes amendments to chapters 1, 2, 4, and 11 of the Comprehensive Growth Management Plan. This text amendment is concurrent with a future land use map amendment, or a FLUME, which is CPA 21-12, the Waterside FLUME, and that will be the next public hearing following this one. This is a very complex text amendment, so we have broken it into three main components to make it a little bit easier to explain. The first of those three components are the site-specific policies that are applicable to the proposed residential land. The second is the expansion of the primary urban service district and the subsequent elimination of the freestanding industrial urban service district. And the third component are amendments to the residential capacity methodology. And in addition to the text and policies of the comp plan that are proposed for amendment, there's also these three figures that are proposed for amendment as well, and that's Figure 4-2, Urban Service District, Figure 11-1, areas currently served by regional utilities, and Figure 11-2, potential service areas. So this is an aerial location map of the subject property. The red outlined property is known as the waterside property. It's about 396 acres. And then the yellow outlined property adjacent to it is industrial future land use. It's the freestanding urban service district, and it's about 250 acres of industrial. So you can see this property in its totality is located south of Southwest 96th Street. It's just east of the St. Lucie Canal. Southwest Canner Highway is fronting its eastern boundary, and it is located west of Southwest Pratt Whitney Road. And we touched on these figures before. You'll see them more in the next hearing, but this is the existing future land use. The property outlined in red has an agricultural future land use designation, and it's proposed for low-density residential, also outlined in red, just to give some context for the current conditions on the property. So moving into the first component of the text amendment, these are the site-specific policies that are proposed for addition to policy 4.1B2 in Chapter 4. So these policies are specific to the proposed residential land that is the subject of the future land use map amendment, so that 396 acres of land. The high spots for what these proposed amendments are, the site-specific policies, are that the residential units shall be limited to a maximum of 1,050 units. Prior to the issuance of the 100th building permit, a monetary contribution of $1,000 per residential unit shall be donated to the Martin County Community Land Trust. All future applications for development approval shall be processed as a planned unit development, or PUD. And the owner-developer shall plan and appropriately fund public facilities consistent with policy 14.1B2, which requires that future developments pay the full cost of capital facilities needed to address the impacts of such development. The second component of the text amendment application is the expansion of the primary urban service district. This proposed expansion covers approximately 646 acres. That's because it covers the proposed residential, that is 396 acres, and the adjacent industrial land, which is 250 acres. So it involves converting the existing freestanding urban service district to become part of the primary urban service district on that adjacent industrial property. And in order to make sure that that change with the freestanding versus primary is consistent with each other, there are 4 policies listed here in Chapter 4 that have the same piece of text proposed for removal, so that there's no conflict between having that land be shown as freestanding when it would be part of the primary. And in order to achieve the expansion of the primary urban service district, there are amendments to those 3 figures that I mentioned earlier that would depict this expansion. So we'll go into those on the next slides. So this is an excerpt of the proposed Figure 4-2 urban service districts that would show this expansion. The red outlined property is the waterside proposed residential property, and the black outlined property is that adjacent industrial land. The pink color on this map denotes the primary urban service district. The purple that is east of Pratt Whitney Road shows the secondary urban service district. So with this proposed amendment, all of that 646 acres is shown in pink to become part of the primary. Also, just a point of clarification on this figure, where my cursor is and where I'm circling, there's these 5 lots that are south of Southwest 96th Street. And on this figure, they're shown in pink, meaning that they would be part of the primary, but they are not part of the primary urban service district currently, and they are not part of this application. So I just wanted to clarify that for the record. The proposed figure 11-1 is the blue outline, and that warm brown color denotes the primary urban service district on this figure. So that same 646 acres would all become part of the blue outline and have that that brown color that denotes that it's part of the primary urban service district with this amendment. And similarly with the proposed figure 11-2, part of that blue outline and having that same brown color that would denote the primary urban service district. So policy 4.7A7 in Chapter 4 of the Comprehensive Plan provides 8 different criteria that must be analyzed whenever the Board of County Commissioners is considering an expansion of the primary urban service district. And during staff's analysis of this application, we found that compliance with criteria 1, 2, and 5 were not met. So criteria 1 is that the application shall not create any internal inconsistency with other elements of the adopted comp plan. Number 2 is not result in incompatibilities with adjacent land uses. And number 5 is demonstrate that reasonable capacity does not exist on suitable land in the existing primary urban service district for the 20-year planning period. And the third and final component of this text amendment application are the amendments to the residential capacity analysis. They're quite complex, and so they span 3 different chapters of the comp plan, Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and Chapter 4. In Chapter 1, there are 4 different policies proposed for amendment. Chapter 2 has amended and revised definitions and new definitions added. And Chapter 4 has seven different policies and sections that are proposed for amendment. We didn't want to get too into the weeds in the presentation, but if you have any specific questions on those, we can certainly answer them. And in conclusion, staff recommends denial of the applicant's proposed text amendments. The basis for staff's recommendation is that compliance with policy 4.7A7, subsections 1, 2, and 5 have not been demonstrated for expansion of the primary urban service district. The proposed amendments to sections of Chapter 1 and policies and sections in Chapter 4 are not clear. Until a methodology is applied and words describing calculations become calculations, it's unclear what the result of these amendments would be. And elements of the proposed amendments to the Population Technical Bulletin and the Residential Capacity Analysis methodology would likely result in multiple internal inconsistencies within the text of the Comprehensive Growth Management Plan. And that concludes staff's presentation.
You have anything, Rick?
So my big question, when was the last time we expanded the urban service district?
That would be the Pineland Prairie Newfield property in Palm City.
Other than that one?
Other than that, no. That was 2018.
2018. That was 2018, but before that, we hadn't expanded it since we adopted that.
The only one that I can think of prior to that of any size would be 2004, when the primary urban service district was expanded into the secondary urban service district on the south side of Cove Road.
Trey Bell.
Pardon?
Trey Bell.
Trey Bell and other lands south of Cove Road. It was, I think it was somewhere around 800 acres.
Yep. And the other problem I have with the needs analysis, the maximum density is how they calculate it, using the maximum density. I don't know of any development in Martin County that got maximum density. Usually when, if it's 8 units per acre, you usually ended up with 5.5 or 6, if that many. And so that to me is really flawed. And And I don't understand why we use maximum density when we know we don't use maximum density in this county, or anywhere, probably. That's not a question. I didn't think you could answer, so I didn't ask.
Is that it, Rick?
Yeah, I think so for now.
Hey, Jarrett?
When the freestanding urban service district was created, it was created as a freestanding industrial urban service district, correct?
Yes, the
And-
freestanding urban service district is only available to properties with an industrial future land use.
And so the properties that are described by that freestanding urban service district are exactly the same sort of polygon that is described by the industrial land use on this map?
Yes.
And there, you mentioned the sort of the island that would be created of non-primary urban service district on 96, but there's also another one on Canner Highway, which is in that odd shape. The other question I have is the commercial waterfront designation that was on that property directly on the C-44 has been moved. I'm not sure I understood what happened to that, because we have a no net loss policy.
Yes. And we recommended eliminating that commercial waterfront future land use designation on that property because there is an Army Corps of Engineers easement on this portion of the property along fronting on the canal.
Yeah, that 100-foot barrier that exists and is problematic.
Is very problematic.
Right. So would that property line be moved to the south of that easement for waterside?
No, the easement is on top of the property, and any development that would occur there, if as proposed by the applicant currently, would have to take into account that easement as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Howard, anything?
I just have a question. I mean, the few things that you say that they're not in compliance with, are they attempting to comply or just what's?
Well, under normal circumstances, when there's a recommendation of denial by staff,
Yes.
applicants resubmit, and we work through it. In this case, the applicant requested to come forward to this body for a public hearing and to the Board of County Commissioners for a public hearing.
Okay.
Anything else, Howard?
No, sir.
I'm just going to ask, Julie, do you want to say anything? Okay, well, just say it into the mic for the record. I just wanted to catch you for once.
Right.
You did catch me for once. I was listening very intently, but at this moment, I do not have anything.
Okay.
Julie, just because I'm curious, students from this development, if it developed, would go to Crystal Lake as an elementary school and South Fork as a high school. Where would their middle school be?
Anderson?
Anderson?
Yes. And this, from what we put together, was a 10-year.
That's likely to change by the time this gets built, probably.
Yes. But I did bring all that documentation if you have any more questions.
So Canner Highway would be the conveyance.
Yes.
Okay. Applicant,
Okay, for the record, my name is Morris Crady, senior partner with Lucido and Associates, and I do have proof of notice to surrounding property owners within 2,500 feet, which was about 800 letters. And we agree with some of staff comments, and we disagree with some of staff comments, and obviously we disagree with the conclusion, the recommendation of denial. But I'll go into a little more detail as to why we're having these points of contention. The site, as you know, is very well explained, the location. This is the South Florida Gateway PUD that has been developed successfully over the past 5 years. And this is the existing land use. And the 250 acres that include South Florida Gateway PUD also includes a 30-acre county site here, which is the county acquired and is proposing to put their operations facility there. That's zone general industrial. That's not part of the PUD. And the surrounding property, this is within the primary urban service district. This is the estate density. There's this commercial along the intersection where the convenience store gas station is. There's self-storage here. This is a commercial site that Publix got approval for to build a shopping center. Crystal Lake Elementary School is located here. This is St. Lucie Falls, which is at 8 units per acre. And this is a commercial waterfront that's been developed in a combination of residential and actual commercial waterfront uses, and that's at 10 units per acre. So the urban service boundary is essentially right across the street from this site. I provided this graphic to kind of show you the relationship of the primary urban service boundary to the property. And again, these are two parcels that are currently 1 unit per 20 acres, but these are 5-acre lots. There's, I think, 5 different tracks here. It doesn't conform to agricultural use, and in fact, there's single-family homes on this parcel, and there's single-family homes on this parcel. So they're currently adjacent to the primary urban service boundary and adjacent to the freestanding industrial urban service district. And I also wanted to show the secondary urban service district that was mentioned. This is where Foxwood, I think, is located. The South Fork High School is in this area, and also the recently approved Pulte project, I think it's called High Point in that area. And then the rural lifestyle. The rural lifestyle was a strategic land use that it was designed to prevent urban sprawl, and in fact, this will contain the urban development because this is now being developed under rural lifestyle. And the owners of this property also purchased 200 acres adjacent to it that they're looking to add to rural lifestyle sometime in the future. So there is no active agriculture adjacent to the property or on the property, although it's been used for agricultural for decades and successfully. But at this point, the transition of urban uses adjacent to us and the rural lifestyle and industrial uses doesn't make it suitable for agricultural use anymore. And in fact, there's services already here. This is the Martin County Utilities service area. And everything in blue here is in the Martin County Utility service area. There's water and sewer lines already constructed along Cantor Highway that goes in front of these agricultural parcels. There's water and sewer lines on 96th Street that goes right adjacent to the property. All of these uses up here can tie into water and sewer, but these lots that unfortunately are on well and septic tank cannot connect to water and sewer, and these lots cannot connect to water and sewer, and so they have well and septic tanks that discharge for the most part into the Roebuck Creek headwaters that start at this point. So, in normal times, the county would look at these out parcels and be proactive and actually include them in the primary urban service district because they're adjacent to the primary urban service. They're adjacent to water and sewer facilities. The same police and fire protection that provides services to the people on the north side of 96th Street will provide services to these parcels and to our property and to these other parcels. So, this would be the addition of the property. It certainly makes sense. We're not out west of town somewhere. The St. Lucie Canal provides a physical barrier to the west. Rural lifestyle provides a physical barrier to the south. Again, these two are out parcels. The county should initiate their own comp plan amendment to give them the ability to connect to water and sewer and not have them stand out by themselves in this situation. So this is the existing land use, but as staff pointed out, and let me go back to this again. This Waterside PUD has been around, or at least the 250 acres here that was adjacent to the urban service district, and part of the urban service district. And let me go to this. This was all part of the primary urban service district, and was done in 2010 by the county commission at that time to promote economic development. I didn't start working on this property until 2018 for the Neal family, and they tried for 10 years to get industrial development on this property, but access was was very difficult because the industrial traffic on Southwest 96th Street with the Arundel Bridge created sight vision problems. And there is currently actually a 16-acre perpetual Army Corps easement that encumbers 16 acres of the property. It runs up to 96th Street and around this. So there was no way we could even develop the property under the commercial waterfront land use. And none of the industrial users that were looking to develop in Martin County, they all wanted access to Kenner Highway, and bringing water and sewer to the site, was a key component, and having frontage on Kenner Highway was a key component to making South Florida Gateway successful, and they have developed successfully. But you can see part of this was the primary urban service district in 2010, and the only reason we had to create an independent freestanding urban service district is because we didn't control this property. But this is primary urban service district, this is agricultural ranchette, this is industrial freestanding urban service district. So we're trying to fill in the gaps, and this is a classic case of really infill. So in order to achieve this, we looked at the residential capacity methodology in Chapter 4, which was changed by a previous commission back in 2016. We believe it overestimates capacity and underestimates need because it does assign maximum density to vacant land uses. It includes vacant lots that can't be developed, such as in Poinciana Gardens. There's hundreds of lots there that are included in the vacant capacity methodology that have no water and sewer, that have no roads, but they're all part of the county's future capacity analysis. And they also estimate that there's a certain number of vacant units during the year. So we believe the methodology is flawed. So we have proposed a different methodology using an expert from Orlando, the GAI consultants. I'll go in that in one moment. So the other portion of this is converting the 250 acres of the freestanding urban service district to primary, and also converting the 396 acres of our agricultural use that's surrounded by the freestanding urban service district to primary urban service district. So we're on the 396 acres, we're restricting it to 1,050 units, which is 2.65 units per acre, not 5 units per acre. We're acquiring this contribution of $1,000 per unit, which will ultimately be over $1 million that the county can use towards affordable housing opportunities. We're also requiring that any future development on the property be processed as a PUD, so the county can evaluate the appropriate use, the appropriate design of any development on the property, and also require public benefits, which could include connecting some of these other properties to water and sewer and preventing impacts to Roebuck Creek. But probably the most important is the fourth part of this, which we're requiring that the development on this subject property, the owners and developers of this property, pay the full cost of capital improvements to serve this development. So there will be no burden on taxpayers. The developer owner of the project has to pay to extend water and sewer. They have to pay to extend the roads that are necessary to facilitate this project, just like they did with South Florida Gateway PUD. The county paid nothing towards the extension of water and sewer towards South Florida Gateway. The developer owner paid for all of those costs and brought services to that site so the county could also access those services for their site. So this is the figure 4-2, one that we're amending. Again, we're on the edge of the urban boundary. We're simply trying to fill in the gaps between the freestanding urban service district and the primary urban service district. This is the actual code language that we're proposing. Again, the section D, the owner developer shall plan and appropriately fund public facilities consistent with the policy in the comp plan, which requires that the development pay the full cost of capital facilities. So there is no burden on taxpayers. We're simply trying to identify an area where residential growth can go because we're out of residential land to develop. So there are 8 criteria within the comprehensive plan that allows for the extension of the primary urban service district. And staff agrees that we meet all of them, but 3. So I'm just going to kind of go through the 3 that they disagree with us on. And one of them is the internal inconsistency with other elements of the adopted plan. And really, the basis for staff's concern here is that we revise the residential capacity formula to be consistent with what we believe is best management practices and the requirements of the Florida statute. So, but they're concerned that that could lead to inconsistencies. We believe that we've addressed all the inconsistencies within the required chapters of the comprehensive plan by amending the various figures and documents and policies within there. We do not believe that the revision to the residential capacity formula creates inconsistencies. The staff also mentioned that there is an inconsistency because they're concerned about a policy, a self-imposed policy that we put on the industrial property that prevented any access of industrial uses to go to State Southwest 96th Street. They're assuming that that's going to be some type of inconsistency, but we believe through the PUD review process, there is no conflict with this policy. There's no reason why any of this industrial traffic has to access 96th Street. We have 3 access points on Kenner Highway. There's no intention of allowing industrial traffic to access 96th Street, and we're the ones that imposed that requirement on the property when we moved the industrial to Kenner Highway. So that's not a legitimate concern in our opinion. They're also concerned about incompatibilities with adjacent land uses. And they're mainly pointing out these parcels along 96th Street and Kenner Highway that are currently agriculture, these 2 parcels here. And again, these parcels are already exist. They're already surrounded on 2 sides by the primary and freestanding urban service district and by a highway on the east side. Water and sewer is available up there. These are not agricultural enclaves. These are residential properties that should be in the primary urban service district because they have access to all urban services. But yet, the county wants to maintain them as agricultural parcels, and we don't believe that's an inconsistency. We believe it's a failure on the county's part to ignore these parcels and the fact that they're in a location that they should be entitled to water and sewer service and urban services. And again, this is how it would look. They'll still be there, but again, these parcels can apply on their own, or the county can initiate an amendment to the land use and to the comprehensive plan that allows these parcels to be in the primary urban service district. They certainly are entitled to it from a locational perspective. So again, this is explaining the fact that the PUD review process will ensure that there's compatibility with the adjacent industrial uses. And in fact, we designed the industrial uses knowing, or at least hoping, that the property in the back of the industrials would be there, would become residential to support the employment base. We're within the South Florida Gateway PUD, we have about 400 to 500 jobs that are being generated. Within the county's 30-acre parcel, another 300 employees are going to be working there. To the south, in the Apogee project and in the Ranch project, another 400 or 500 jobs that will be created. And again, it's the perfect location for residential, where we propose it behind the architectural, or we're behind the industrial area, and compatibility. And we've built giant berms for compatibility. We're proposing lakes back there to create separation between the industrial. And there is no incompatibility with the surrounding agricultural areas or the rural lifestyle areas. There's not a compatibility issue. Staff does agree that we're not going to adversely impact environmental, natural, historical, or archaeological resources. They acknowledge that the site is already impacted with environmental. There are no environmental or archaeological or historical elements on this property because it's been commercially farmed for decades. So we agree that there's no issue. The county staff also agrees that we're consistent with Goal 4.9 related to appropriate residential land use capacities. Because again, by going to 5 units per acre, we can propose a range of housing types. They all don't have to be $1 million homes. We can have townhomes, we can have apartments, we can have single-family homes, but we can address the need to provide appropriate residential land use capacities for the anticipated population and provide residents with a variety of choices in housing types. And that's a requirement of the comp plan, and the county staff agrees that we meet that criteria. This is one that we don't. It really boils down, does the county really need to plan for the next 20 years, or can they cook the numbers in the current formula to show that they don't need to do anything for the next 20 years? And, we did our own capacity analysis. We hired a consultant out of Orlando, GAI Consultants, and they're showing that there's only 64% capacity in the 15-year period, and now that's been extended to 20 years. There's even less capacity. And this particular firm does a lot of these studies throughout the state. We based it on best management practices consistent with the Florida statutes. And the county basically disagrees because we're not following the policies or the formula in the current comprehensive plan. Well, we're not following those policies because they're not correct. They're flawed. They overestimate the capacity in the county. And the county has acknowledged that in the past, but they were not able to change the formula to address best management practices. So we're saying that there's less than 100% capacity currently in the 20-year horizon. The comp plan says you have to start expanding the urban service boundary once you can meet the 100% capacity. And in the past, before it was changed, it was 125%. The county had to start planning at 125% capacity because that allowed for some market variation, but they took that out. So now, when we fall under 100%, we have to expand the district or the urban service area. Now, the county's original analysis was based on
Wait, Rick, let him finish, then you can ask him any question.
Yeah, the county's original analysis was based on the metro forecasting model that was done in December 2023, and that showed that there was 237% capacity for future growth within the vacant lands. Now, we obviously disagree with that. Now, the county recently updated the new residential capacity. It was adopted on Tuesday by the county commission, and you can see, they went out 20 years, and it dropped from 237% to 148% of the projected demand through 2045. And it also concludes that the capacity in the secondary primary urban service district falls to 68% of the projected demand in 2045. So even the county's current analysis, which is still based on the flawed methodology in the comprehensive plan, shows that it's time to plan for future growth. We just can't ignore the fact that we're running out of land. I've been doing this for 40 years and working under the comprehensive plan for that long, and I can tell you, my son's a realtor, I know Mr. Hartman's a realtor, there is no vacant land out there for residential use, and the numbers that the county is using assumes that every parcel is going to have every vacant parcel is going to apparently ignore the wetland rules and develop at maximum density, and the areas in the CRA are going to develop at 15 units per acre, 3-story, buildings, and it's just not true. But that's how the analysis is done right now. It's assuming maximum density, and the CRAs are going to develop at 15 units per acre, and which means everything has to be 3 stories to even get close to 15 units per acre. And the one thing the county staff doesn't do is they don't look at the second part of this policy. It says, for the purpose of this subsection, reasonable means available for development from the standpoint of environmental concerns, availability of development sites in relationship to projected needs of the population. Well, we know there's no environmental concerns on this property, but the properties that are left within the primary urban service district have not been developed because there are environmental concerns on those properties. They're 50, 60, 70% wet. So you have to acknowledge that those parcels aren't suitable for maximum development because they do have significant environmental concerns that diminish their capacity, but no one's saying that. It's also important that you look at the efficient use of expansion of public facilities and service. County staff concurs that based on the proximity of existing public facilities and services, this site is suitable. It can expand water and sewer services because of its proximity to the primary urban service district and existing water and sewer lines, existing police and fire protection, existing schools. Crystal Lake Elementary is within walking distance. South Fork High School is less than a mile away. Shopping is within a close proximity. So, and again, the last part of that, county staff concurs that this is a quote, that the site is suitable based upon the location adjacent to the primary urban service district and proximity to employment, cultural centers, fire and police protection, and the avoidance of adverse impacts to natural resources. That's a quote from the county staff report. So the county agrees that on policy 6 that we demonstrate the land affected is suitable for urban uses at a minimum. It's not environmentally sensitive. It doesn't affect groundwater recharge or endanger or threatened species. So they agree that we meet criteria 6. They agree that because of our addition of the text policy that requires the developer owner to pay for all the impacts or all the services needed to facilitate the project, that we also meet criteria 7, that we can plan for a full range of urban and public facilities economically and efficiency and meet the county's adopted level of service standards, because we're paying to increase that capacity to service the project, not the county taxpayers. County staff also agrees that we're consistent with the adopted capital improvements elements, again, because we added that condition that requires the applicant, the developer, to amend the capital improvement plan and pay for developer-funded improvements to increase traffic capacity or utility capacity, and we're prepared to do that. We're prepared to make improvements to Southwest 96th Street. We're prepared to make improvements to water and sewer in the area. We're prepared to allow other property owners in the area to connect to water and sewer. This site is ideally situated, and there's only a couple sites in the entire county that can support the expansion of the urban service district under these criteria. So we unfortunately, the staff is recommending denial based on the policies 1, which was the internal consistencies. We believe they've been addressed. Policy 2, which regards compatibility, we think through the PUD approval process, we can make residential compatible with the adjacent industrial uses and the adjacent rural lifestyle uses and the adjacent agricultural, which aren't really agricultural uses. And in subsection 5, we believe the county's residential capacity analysis is flawed. It overestimates what can be built in the urban service area. We think the county should be using residential capacity to plan for growth, not to try to deny growth from ever happening. And the other policies, the other reasons for the county's denial is based on the fact that we're changing the residential capacity formula. And again, we're doing that to show reality. We're not trying to cook the books. We're trying to show what really can be built and what the real need is. So, we think we're in the perfect location for expansion of the urban boundary. It doesn't lead to urban sprawl. It makes a lot of sense. This is, again, one of the probably only 2 areas in the county where the expansion of the primary urban service district makes sense. And with that understanding, we would appreciate your support.
Is there anybody, are you bringing anyone else up? Okay, Rick, your question or comment?
You said, why can't we change the formula to do the needs analysis? What's hold up there? I mean, growth management realizes nobody gets maximum density. So there ought to be some kind of formula to say, okay, on an average, if you've got 8 units per acre or 6 units per acre or whatever, that you're only going to get 6 or you're only going to get 4. Why don't we do our analysis based on those kind of numbers rather than this pie in the sky thing? Because to Morris's comment, I mean, I'm a realtor, been doing it for over 20 years. And I've sold one house in 20 years. I've only sold one house in 20 years. And so I sell land, and Morris is right. There is no vacant land left to do something like this with, unless it's got wetlands in it, and we can't even mitigate the wetlands in the county, which is a whole nother issue. But if you've got 40 acres and 20 of it's wet, and depending on how the wetlands laid out, you can't do anything with that. So somehow we've got to get to the point to get realistic. The other problem I have with this is a perfect spot for it. If we're going to do anything with the urban service district, this is the place to do it. Most of the people are either going to work in this waterside PUD, I mean, in the industrial area, or they're going to be taking Bridge Road out to 95 and going to Palm Beach and work, which is getting really silly that most people in Palm Beach, I mean, Martin County have to go somewhere else to work. So why not have 1,000 homes that are on the south end of the county so people don't come through Palm City? I live in Stewart West. People come from Okeechobee, people come from Port St. Lucie, coming through 714 is horrible. And probably some of these people are going there. So somehow we've got to get our head out of our, get our head up, pick our head up and start planning. These standalone urban service districts just bother me to no end. I hate them. And so if we've only had 2 urban service district expansions in the last 20 years, something like that,
Yes, sir.
and you're telling me in 20 years that we've still got all this vacant land that we can put houses on? I don't believe it. I mean, I just can't imagine that, because all we hear about is rampant growth, and where are all these people going? If they're all coming here, most of that land's got to be used up, and so this location is perfect. I'm taking old farm ground that, and you said it was successful ag. Well, that wasn't successful. That's why there's no farms there. They weren't making any money, and they sold it. So this is the place to do it. But to answer my question, why can't we change our analysis on how we figure out, do we really need more residential land or more industrial land? And if you want to look at it on industrial land, if you looked at, and I did this, if you look at the industrial land, most of the industrial land before Indiantown Incorporated, that was our industrial, kind of our hub. Most of that industrial land in Indiantown is about 40% wet. And I've seen site plans done on that land. And you know what it costs to try to develop around a wetland? I mean, you guys don't know the numbers, but you know it's really expensive to try to do something like that. So if we're going to do something, plan where it's going to be close to where water and sewer is. That's everybody talks about. We don't want any more septic tanks. Well, this is the perfect spot to put it.
Well, let him answer now. Do you have an answer for it, or?
Members of the local planning agency, I'd start by saying that legislative decisions like this are fairly debatable. It is not a quasi-judicial situation where you compare it to the black letters on the white paper and say yes or it is and no it isn't. There are points to be made in favor and there are points to be made not in favor of any given future land use map amendment or text amendment that comes before you. Staff disagrees with the applicant's slide that you see on the screen on subsection 1, 2, and 5. There are internal consistencies. In fact, I'm prepared to add another one to the list that's been discussed. We acknowledge some compatibility with adjacent, but we also see, if you'll go to one of the slides showing, Jenna, the property with the outline, showing there, next one down or up. Yeah, there. May I? The applicant is proposing to lay out residential adjacent to Ag Ranchette, and then all along this boundary where my cursor is moving, which is in all of it industrial. That's a long linear area, and the residential would be laid out around that industrial all the way around. And so it is entirely a debatable decision as to whether or not it's compatible to put 2.7 residential units per acre, which is what they would be capping it down to, adjacent to all of the industrial that's there. Yes, it's possible through a PUD to address that, but this is the land use stage where you decide even before you get to the PUD whether it's appropriate or not, and it's fairly debatable. There are points to be made in favor, there are points to be made against. Going back to the three items that the applicant noted, the residential capacity analysis, which has been questioned here, I would first say that in the entire history of the residential capacity analysis, even before it was put into the text of the comp plan in 2013, staff has always counted maximum density. And the main reason for that is that different properties have different density capabilities. Wetlands is one issue, stormwater management, traffic concurrency, various things are issues that can limit a development or not. And if you use a planned unit development, in many cases, you can achieve very close to your max density. That doesn't mean it happens in every case. There are cases it doesn't happen. And probably in decades past, that was more true. But in more recent developments, we've been seeing the densities get a lot closer to the max permitted by the future land use designation. So, and that's just an anecdotal observation, but it's still reasonable to consider that max because you don't know whether an applicant's going to press for the full max, whether the site conditions permit it. And so it is as reasonable to say 100% as it is to try and make up a number as the applicant is proposing in their proposed residential capacity analysis, as it is to make up some other number. It becomes extremely debatable either way. And so there is reason for doing it that way and counting the maximum density. We did bring forward proposed changes to the residential capacity analysis. You may remember from the evaluation and appraisal report and the year-based plan amendments. The Board of County Commissioners declined to make those proposed changes. And it's a fairly debatable, that was a fairly debatable decision as well. And I would note for the record that the residential capacity analysis that was put into the comp plan in 2013 and was then litigated and found consistent with state statute through an administrative hearing process. So it remains a viable and reasonable option for calculating residential capacity. And I concur with something Mr. Crady did say, is that there was another residential capacity analysis done. We did it just this year. We presented to the Board of County Commissioners this last Tuesday because there is a plan policy that requires the residential capacity analysis to be done, updated, and adopted prior to considering amendments such as this one. We did that in the midpoint between two 5-year analyses, specifically in response to this proposed plan amendment. And Mr. Crady has correctly identified the fact that the capacity is less than it was calculated in 2023. So yes, there are decreases in the amount of residential vacant land in the urban service district. But you will note when you look at that residential capacity analysis there, that there are around 5,000 units that are not speculative at all in terms of max density. There are 5,000 units of capacity listed in that analysis that are all approved site plans. So there's no speculation as to whether you can get max density. Those are approved site plans. And the Board of County Commissioners on Tuesday approved 2 of those site plans in Rio. So there is capacity. You can debate the methodology, you can debate all of these other things, but there is capacity, and that updated residential capacity analysis shows that it's there.
Jarrett, do you have any questions for Morris?
No, sir.
Jim?
No, I mean, it would be mostly observations rather than questions.
Okay. Mr. Brown? Nothing. Do we have any public comment?
Nothing that's been turned in.
Nope. Okay. Back to the board. Did you want to say something else, Rick?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just Paul Schilling for the record. You did receive a copy of the letter from,
Yes, from the,
okay, thank you.
Guardians as
from the
well.
Guardians, yes.
And the Guardians and Miss,
Right, Mish, yeah.
Yes. Both. Okay.
I got a question, and I'm a little bit, I'm not sure. Would this qualify as an agricultural enclave? At one time it was ag, and now it's surrounded by either residential or industrial. Would it qualify as an agricultural enclave and have something that the owner could come back on us for?
At the present time, we do not we have not found that that it meets all of the terms and requirements in Florida statute to meet that definition. I think if it did, the applicant would probably be exercising that option.
Well, maybe it's just not doing it yet.
Depends on what the state does to preempt us.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that, you know, and this is not a question, I'm playing Jim tonight.
Well, you'd have to switch sides.
I just hate to see us, you know, get ourselves in a crack again that here's an opportunity to do something right and put some houses where it needs to be, because you've got Kippingers up there in the northern part of the county that's going to help. And what you said in Rio is over there. But if you come to the southern part of the county, in a place where a lot of people are wanting to go to Palm Beach to work, we don't have anything down there. And when you look at all what's been done with the rural lifestyle between the three of them that are down there, there's not any ground left much to develop down there. And if you look at the border we're putting around between rural lifestyle and the C-44 project and conservation easements and the things that we've done, there's just not a whole lot of property left. And I had a large landowner say, I asked him why he bought it, and he said, this is an infill project. And I said, infill, what are you talking about? And his attorney pulled out a nighttime map. And here's Palm Beach County coming up with all the lights, and St. Lucie County coming all the way down with the lights. And he said, right here, there's no lights here. And he said, at some point, and we're patient, we don't care if we own this for 20 years or 25 years, but at some point when we get ready to do something and the state looks at all these lights coming both ways, and here's Martin County sitting in the middle of it and it's all dark, that they're going to go to the legislature, and the legislature's going to tell us what we can do with that. And that makes me really nervous. So that's my soapbox.
Okay. I don't really have a soapbox, and I agree with Morris, but my job is not to look at what Morris says, which makes perfect sense to me, but it's really to take the experts, you, and make sure that we are following the rules that was laid down by the county commission. The county commission has said X, Y, and Z. Therefore, as long as we are following those rules, and I'm making sure that the applicant is getting a square deal according to those rules. I wish I could change them, but that's not my job. And while this is not quasi-judicial, it is legislative, I believe that's too much on the other side to agree with the applicant to overturn the 3 reasons that you denied approval. And I don't think I think the county commission on this is going to be heard on Tuesday,
November 18th.
on November 18th. If they want to, they can very easily approve this because it is their own rules, and they're not changing. They don't have to change anything in order to approve this. But that's up to them. I see myself as making sure the rules are followed, and I think staff has followed the rules as the county commission has laid down. I don't think they're the right rules, but I do think that we have to follow what the county commission wishes. Otherwise, they should change the rules. So I'll look for a motion one way or the other, unless anyone else has any other questions.
I'd move for staff's recommendation to deny this land use amendment,
I'll second that.
or text amendment, sorry.
We have a motion by Mr. Moore, a second by Jared. I can't pronounce your last name. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 4-1 with Mr. Hartman opposed.
Well-argued point, though.
It'll come back and bite us in the butt, I'll bet you.
Well, this has been a fulcrum for a while.
Okay, moving on. NPH2 Comprehensive Plan Amendment 2112 Waterside Flume. Before we get started, since we moved not to approve the last, doesn't this automatically fall?
It doesn't, because the board is going to hear the, if you recommend approval or denial of a project, the board still hears it, so we don't know what the board's going to do on the first project, so this could go to the
Can we
board.
just- I mean, unless someone objects, can we just take a motion one way or the other?
The applicant would probably like to present
like to
their-
present?
Yes.
Okay, then
preserve their
staff
due
can present
process.
first.
Thank you. So for the record, again, Jenna Nobby, Senior Planner with the Growth Management Department, and this is Comprehensive Plan Amendment 21-12, the Waterside Future Land Use Map Amendment. And this is also requested by Lucido and Associates on behalf of the owner, Cantor 96th Street Investments LLC and South Florida Gateway Industrial LLC. So we already covered some of the history, so we don't have to rehash all of these slides again, but just going through how we got to this point today. And this boundary that you see on the right side here where my cursor is the boundary that is considered for this future land use map amendment. So the amendment request in this application is to amend the future land use of the subject property from agricultural to low-density residential. And this is concurrent with the text amendment that we heard in the last public hearing. The subject property for this flume is 396.06 acres. And Table 1 here shows a comparison between the existing future land use designation and the proposed future land use of low-density residential and what the total residential units are allowed within each of those designations. So under the agricultural designation, which has a residential density of 1 unit per 20 acres, there would be 19 potential residential units permitted. And under the proposed low-density residential at a maximum of 5 units per acre, there would be 1,980 units, but with the concurrent text amendment that we had just heard, they're proposed to restrict those maximum number of units to 1,050. Again, just for context, the location map, the red outlined property is the subject of this specific future land use map amendment, and that is the 396 acres. And the existing future land use map showing that the land use designation of this red outlined subject property is agricultural. And then the proposed land use designation of low-density residential in that property. So moving into some of the future land uses in the immediate area of the subject property. To the north, we have the blue commercial waterfront designation, the agricultural designation over these 5 lots south of Southwest 96th Street. Then moving north of 96th Street is the mobile home designation and residential estate density 2 units per acre. And where my cursor is, this teal box here is general institutional, and that is Crystal Lake Elementary. Then to the south of the subject property is an agricultural future land use designation. To the east, we have the estate density 2 units per acre, the agricultural ranchette properties fronting Cantor Highway that have a residential density of 1 unit per 5 acres, and the 250 acres of industrial that we have previously discussed. And to the west of the property, we have the St. Lucie Canal and the Three Lakes property, also known as Apogee, which has a rural lifestyle future land use designation. So with this land use amendment, staff does have concerns with compatibility with surrounding land uses, and we can go into that further. So there are 3 sections of the staff report that go over different criteria for land use changes and for urban sprawl. In section 2.1 of the staff report, during our analysis, we found that 1 out of the 4 criteria for a future land use map amendment have been met, and that's criteria B. In section 2.2 of the staff report, or I'll back up, Florida statutes has 2 different sets of indicators or criteria that help judge whether a future land use amendment discourages the proliferation of urban sprawl. So we analyzed both of those sets of criteria in this report. And under the first set, staff found that this amendment discourages the proliferation of urban sprawl under 6 of the 13 criteria that are found in Florida statute. And in that second set of criteria, there are 8 criteria that must be analyzed, and staff found that this amendment discourages the proliferation of urban sprawl under 3 of the 8 criteria that are found in Florida statute. So in conclusion, staff recommends denial of the applicant's proposed future land use map amendment. This is because of the compatibility with adjacent land uses, the sprawl criteria that we just reviewed, and the current lack of public facilities to serve an additional 1,050 residential units. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Any questions for staff?
Yeah, when staff analyzed the capacity for water and sewer specifically from the freestanding industrial urban service district, was advanced treatment of wastewater considered? Is there capacity for that, including the proposed rural land use developments further west that are also going to be using the capacity here?
I know we have a member of our utilities department here.
Leo Rapetti, Technical Services Administrator with Martin County Utilities. No, we had not looked at the advanced wastewater treatment
Capacity?
capacity for this specific project.
Because this is 1,000 new units on already a stretched freestanding urban service, industrial urban service provision.
I'm not sure I understand the
Yeah.
question.
Thank you.
Capacity exists for 1,000 units, perhaps, at least according to Morris previously. Is that advanced wastewater treatment, or is that just minimal service?
Not minimal, it's a standard wastewater treatment that we provide
But it's not
through
advanced?
secondary, primary and secondary disinfection.
Okay. But it's not denitrified, it's just as close to state standards as we have to be?
We exceed state standards.
Is it like the water in his house?
No, my house actually is on septic, because
All right, is it
we
like the
haven't,
water in my
we haven't
house? I
got
know
that
I'm
out in
on
Rocky
sewer.
Point yet, which is part of the problem.
I think it would be safe to say it's the same, it would be the same as on the other side of, on the north side of 96th Street, right?
Correct.
Yeah, it's the same wastewater treatment facility, the same, but that was provided for South Fork, years ago.
Everything from south of the Roosevelt Bridge is through the Tropical Farms
Right,
wastewater treatment facility.
right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Morris, you're up.
Yes. Again, for the record, my name is Morris Crady, Senior Partner with Aceto & Associates. You have to go all the way to the end of this. And just on the water issue, just so you know, we have been in discussions with the county utilities department and, talked about the fact that, we would have to make sure there's capacity for this project before we get any type of PUD approval. And we talked about helping them with capacity by providing well sites on this property, and also by constructing additional loop system around the property. So again, the cost of that, we've already committed to paying for as part of the text amendment. So any capacity that's needed for water and sewer, any capacity that's needed for traffic, any capacity that's needed for fire and police protection the cost would be borne by the owner of the property, not by the county. And that's in the text amendment. So under the flume, there's let me just get back here to the beginning. There's 4 criteria for the county to evaluate changes to land use, and only one of the 4 criteria has to be met. We believe we meet the criteria A, which is past changes in land use designations in the general area, make the proposed use logical and consistent with these uses. And again, we're talking about past changes being the industrial property, being the rural lifestyle, and some of the other land use changes that have been in the area. I think the county staff disagrees with that because they don't believe adequate public services are available. But again, all we need to do is meet one. They do agree that we meet criteria B, which is growth in the area in terms of development of vacant land, redevelopment, and availability of public services has altered the character of the area, such that the proposed request is now reasonable and consistent. They do agree with that criteria. So the only reason they're not agreeing with criteria A is because their comment is the applicant must commit to funding capacity improvements for the full range of urban public facilities and services that are sufficient to support the proposed future land use designation. Well, we are committing to that by virtue of the text amendment, so I'm not sure why they're disagreeing that we're not going to have adequate public services available. They do agree that the past changes in the designations make it logical and consistent. And again, the comp plan only requires that we meet one of the 4 criteria in order to recommend approval of a land use change. And again, we're ensuring that adequate public facilities are available by committing to making those improvements as part of the development. And to talk about urban sprawl, I just want to make sure everyone understands what urban sprawl is. It's defined as a development pattern characterized by low-density, automobile-dependent development with either a single use or multiple uses that are not functionally related, requiring the extension of public facilities and services in an inefficient manner, and failing to provide a clear separation between urban and rural uses. And I think just on the basis of location alone, where this is not urban sprawl, this really is an infill property adjacent to urban boundaries. Water and sewer facilities are in the area. There's police and fire, all the services are there. So it's hard to claim that we're urban sprawl. And one of the reasons the county is making that judgment is because we're proposing only low-density residential use on the 396 acres. What they're not considering is that we're part of a much larger area, and we're there's schools within a mile. There's commercial services. There's marine waterfront services. There's employment of over 1,000 jobs within proximity. So you can't just look at this application as just the 396 acres. We proposed single use on that 396 acres being residential, but that also allows for multifamily, it allows for townhomes, it allows for single family. So we don't believe there's an urban sprawl issue here or a compatibility issue because of the adjacent uses in the area. Even, staff agrees with this particular indicator. The location is not, they agree that the project is not a substantial distance from the urban area. The PUSD is across the subject site on Southwest 96th Street. The subject property is adjacent to 250 acres of industrial land that is within a freestanding and is currently undergoing development. So in this case, they agree that it discourages the proliferation of urban sprawl. So there's another finding that the county staff agrees that it maximizes the use of future public facilities and services, again, because of the proximity. So there's areas in the sprawl criteria that conflict with the county's previous determinations, and all of them are subjective, but at the end of the day, we disagree that for instance, that we do see and encourage a functional mix of uses, but you got to look at the property in the context of the overall area, not just the land use map amendment that we're proposing. So again, all of these elements adjacent to the property, water, sewer, Crystal Lake Elementary, South Fork High School, all of these uses are a mix of uses that support residential on this property, because there is no other residential available. We have all the other uses except residential in the area. So we believe we do provide a functional mix of uses, and it does, in all cases, discourage the proliferation of urban sprawl. And again, the county staff in this particular area agrees that, agrees that we can have linked and related services because of the adjacent use. So there's a lot of inconsistencies in the staff's conclusion. They basically determined that we discourage the proliferation of urban sprawl under 6 of the 13 criteria. Our analysis finds that we discourage urban sprawl under all 13 of the criteria. And that's based on an analysis that we provided to the county. There's also additional parts of the determination of urban sprawl that, again, the county's position is that, again, looking at their narrow analysis, that we don't have a balance of uses because they're only looking at the 396 acres, not the entire area that has other supporting uses. And in their conclusion of the 8 additional criteria, they believe we meet 3 of the 8. We've evaluated and we believe we meet 7 of the 8 criteria. And again, that's because we're not just looking at the 396 acres, we're looking at the 250 acres adjacent to it, that's industrial. We're looking at the 1,200 acres in Apogee that provides jobs. We're looking at the other land uses in the area, the commercial, the school facilities in the area. So we believe all that taken together, we're not urban sprawl. We're infill development that happens to be agriculture. And the county staff agrees that this is not the place for agricultural development. Again, staff analysis states that most agricultural lands are far removed from urban service districts and cannot be converted to urban use without substantial increases in the cost of providing and maintaining and operating dispersed services. However, the subject property is not far removed from urban service district. This is the county's conclusion, not, and also mine. And again, and they agree that the low-density residential land use were consistent. The comments that they're stating, and this is again from staff's analysis, the neighboring communities of River Forest and St. Lucie Falls have developed under a density of approximately 6 units per acre. With a requested density of 5 units per acre, the low-density residential designation is not incompatible with the existing neighborhoods to the north. The proposed density does not appear to impact the stability and integrity of established residential development. However, the proposed residential has much less compatibility with adjacent industrial lands. However, they go on to say, a large-scale residential PUD would require buffering and transitions between the industrial and the residential uses, as well as buffering and transitions between the residential and surrounding land uses to maximize compatibility. So we agree. We agree with staff that low density is the appropriate land use on this property. We agree with staff that agricultural is not the appropriate land use on this property. But yet, we're stuck with a recommendation of denial. And again, for reasons that just clearly don't make sense. One of the reasons is inconsistency with, they believe that if they approve the residential land use, that we're somehow going to allow industrial traffic to start accessing Southwest 96th Street. That's never been our intent. We voluntarily agreed to restrict industrial property from Southwest 90th Street. There's no basis for assuming that we can't comply with this self-imposed policy, and then they can maintain that and ensure that through the PUD review process. The county doesn't have to allow industrial traffic on Southwest 96th Street, and this shouldn't be a basis for denial. So they're recommending denial because we don't meet, well, they're saying we only meet 1 of the 4 criteria. Well, that's all you have to meet is 1 of the 4 criteria. We think we meet 2. They're recommending denial based on the urban sprawl criteria, which we believe we meet all of them that discourages urban sprawl. So it's just that there's really no basis for the recommendation. There's a lot of conflicting statements in here. And again, we believe the full impact of the subject property and all of its requirements can be addressed during the PUD master site plan application. The county has full ability to approve or deny a future PUD on the property if it doesn't meet these criteria, but we're convinced that this is the right place for additional residential development because there is no available residential development in this area that can support the thousands of jobs that are being created within this area. With that understanding, I don't think you'll support the project, but I think we have a good argument nonetheless. So, thank you.
Thanks, Morris.
Any questions for Morris?
No, thanks. Thank you, Morris.
So, staff, I think he makes some pretty good arguments for accepting, but it doesn't really matter since the text amendment isn't accepted. So could you go through those just for me? It's academic, but why you rejected the staff? Yeah, I understand his point, and I sort of agree.
Well, I don't know if I can cover everything that is
Pick the
quickly and
highlights.
smooth as Mr. Crady, but let's go to page 15 of the staff report, or it's page PDF 15. This is Mr. Crady showed you some of the criteria, or some of the staff quotes on the criteria A, which discusses past changes in land use designations. Past changes in land use designations in the general area make the proposed use logical and consistent with these uses. That's the criteria. Well, it's land use changes that make this change reasonable, not just any land use change in the area. So for instance, the rural lifestyle changes in the area don't justify this land use change. They are land use changes that are land use changes. Likewise, if you look at this paragraph here, which wasn't quoted, talking about the general commercial acreage at the intersection of 96th Street and Cantor Highway. Well, that's an amendment that didn't change the character of the area. That was just an expansion, a little expansion of an existing general commercial piece of ground that has been there since 1982 as the general commercial. So that was just really a little expansion of the general commercial so that the proposed commercial development wouldn't go into a wetland.
Clyde, I disagree with you. Once you made that bigger change to that commercial and opened it up where you could put a Publix in a shopping center and do this kind of stuff, you changed the area. If it stayed the 7-Eleven store and that's all you had, you didn't change the area. But when you put in a Publix, you have changed the area. You have changed the complexion of that part of the property or that area. That people want to be there now because there is a Publix. A lot of people don't want to live there because they got to go a long way to Publix. But you put a Publix there, and you have changed the area.
Perfect example of fairly debatable. In the next paragraph down, the residential future land use change in the area for Pulte
May I
at Christ
just-
Fellowship.
Paul Schilling, for the record, just to clarify, there is the ability to construct a Publix at that intersection, but there is no Publix.
But
Just to,
yeah,
yeah,
okay. But
yes.
Well, if you wanted to expand that argument a little further, rural land use allowed this expansion, which is the exact definition of suburban sprawl.
I think now we're going a little too far.
No, I think this was what was happening while that decision was being made. This is exactly what happens.
Clyde, go on, please.
So in the next paragraph down on this page, staff looks at the larger area, and we looked at the Pulte at Christ Fellowship property that became a residential subdivision. It's near Bulldog Way and South Fork High School. There was a land use change there that did not require the expansion of the secondary urban service district and did not require changing from secondary to primary. It utilizes the available services and increased the densities, but it was a land use change that was consistent with the with the secondary urban service district. It wasn't of the magnitude of the proposed change that we're discussing here tonight. And in contrast with the land use changes discussed above, the proposed amendment seeks to increase the residential number of units from 19, we'll call it 1,050 because the land use could go to 1984 units if there's no restriction, but given the restriction, it's still a bump from 19 to 1,050, which is a much larger magnitude than the other. It says, but residential future land use map amendments of this size and intensity have not been made in this general area. So when you look at the larger area, There's nothing else of this size that's been approved in this area of tropical farms and so on like that. So
Because it's not been done does not mean it's not a good idea.
not arguing
I
that
can debate
point.
about that, too.
Not arguing that point. But Mr. Crady has taken some pieces of text out of this larger multi-paragraph analysis that's intended to be very balanced and recognize good points and not so good points. And what I attempt to do here was point out some of the ways in which the analysis was not favorable and why, when you balance the scales, staff did not find criteria A had been met. And I think if you go through the sprawl criteria, you can have a similar debate and a similar discussion as well, and consider them fairly debatable.
Well, I think I'll let the commission have that debate if they pass the text amendment. Can I get a motion, please?
I'd move for staff's recommendation of denial of the future land use change on this property.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So we have a motion for staff's recommendation from Mr. Moore, and seconded by, say your last name, please? Yes, Jarrett. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Mr. Hartman has said nay. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, members of the local planning agency.
Thank you.
Do you want to say anything?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Schilling for the record. So we have an application on November 20th, and then we also have some applications on December 4th. So was looking for just to let you know that.
I think I'll be here.
I will be here for the November one. I think I'll be here for the December one, but I'm not sure right this second.
I'll be here for both.
Thank you.
And that's the Farm City event, so on the 20th, so everybody comes to that.
Yes.
Buy your tickets.
Yes, but that's at 11:30 or
Yeah,
so.
I'm just getting a plug in,
Oh.
buy your tickets.
Okay,
We only got about 10 left.
Clyde,
bought the
before
tickets.
we leave, this has been approved by the state?
yeah, it was, no.
Approved by the Board of County Commissioners
But has it been
Tuesday.
approved by the state?
It doesn't have to be.
The methodology doesn't have to be approved by the state?
Well, the methodology was reviewed by the state in an administrative hearing and found consistent with state statute.
We're adjourned.
This is a